Welcome to our live Pepper Talk Radio. We are live on YouTube and Facebook, and excited to be here with you guys this evening. For those of you who are listening later, we're excited to also have you hear what we're about to say and talk about. Before we jump in, though, I just want to remind everybody to check out jacemedical.com, jacemedical.com. Right now, with all the shortages that we're seeing and happening, there's actually a lot more than we think going on behind the scenes, that a lot of these providers, and Jace Medical actually has a newsletter they put out, and they shared some statistics, some things that are going on around the country. It's important to make sure you're getting your antibiotics. Of course, once you have your antibiotic storage, make sure that you will look for and learn and get the skill sets to be able to move towards more natural sources of health and related content. But Jace Medical has their Jace Case, and they also have Jace Daily, which is your opportunity to get all your traditional medicines, your routine, regular medicines as well. So make sure you stock up on those as well. Get the Jace Case. You can now add ivermectin and things like the EpiPens and other things. So make sure that you go to jacemedical.com, use code PrepperTalk to get $10 off your Jace Medical order. Also, please remember that with all the things that are going on in the marketplace, we're seeing, typically as of the recording and as of this particular recording, we're in the month of November. It's usually a good month for the stock market, but don't let these bumps and maybe these little fake outs mess you up or pull you away from the real long-term goal of the stock market. And see if you maybe want to have some gold and silver in your portfolio by talking to our friends over at ITM Trading. ITM Trading is a great way for you to get the opportunity to hear from and learn from the experts in economic issues that are going on, macroeconomics, microeconomics. They're great, and they will tell you why, and maybe even share with you some great ideas as to how you can get gold into your portfolio. So go to learn.itmtrading.com/Prepper Talk Radio, or call 1-866-257 0481. That's 1-866-257-0481 for a free, which is my favorite four-letter F word, by the way, a free consultation. All right, guys, the invasion is happening. We are being invaded. I don't know if you've taken time to look at our border for the last several, it's just been a constant flow. It's crazy going on with the invasion. Not only that, in terms of actual physical invasion, border crossing, but I feel like there's a psychological invasion, mental invasion into so many of our citizens, where we just are jumping on every bandwagon that we get from our government to go crazy. I don't understand some of the college campuses, the protests that we're seeing, some of the things that we're hearing in the news about different places that are doing like the abortion things that are going on. Like, and see stuff that's happening in our schools. I think it's not just a physical invasion, but it's also a mental invasion as well. So what do you guys think?
Mm-hmm. Well, they've definitely been trying to dumb us down for decades and decades, right? So that we can't think critically. We can't pay attention to the truth. In our last episode, we talked about truth. So when you guys, if you haven't already listened to that, if you're listening to this later, make sure you check that out. But it's interesting because they're invading every aspect of our life. And what's not been invaded has actually been almost intentionally, like a horse. You put the little blinders on the side to keep them focused in one direction. And everything in our lives has been changed to that. So we are focused now to only go in certain directions, to only do certain things, and to stay in our lane. You've probably heard that a million times. Stay in your lane. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is there's so much other things going on that if you get out of your lane, you start looking around, you're like, oh crap. Okay, now I'm recognizing patterns. I'm recognizing things that are going on. Mm-hmm. Like here's one that a lot of people haven't recognized. Have you guys heard about the 400 guns stolen from a UPS facility in Memphis?
No.
Has it been like a month on that, or
a week ago?
I've heard about it. A week ago? No, I haven't heard about that.
Oh, did you hear about the 400 bulletproof vests stolen in Manhattan? Oh, that happened a week ago also. How about the 704 pounds of detonator that went missing back in April?
Ammonium nitrate?
400 blasting caps.
Oh,
wow.
No.
So you start putting things together when you start paying attention, right? And you also look at what's going on at the border. 80,000 missing people, single men, disappeared, right? Over 90,000
Is that
children
children
missing,
too? Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go.
right? Actually, I think the number on the children is closer to about 200,000 now. But there's a Senate hearing going on about 85,000 of them currently. So the question is, where are the people going? What's happening? And have you seen the news reports on not on mainstream media, wondering what's going on with these hotels all over New York and all over Chicago and all over LA that are no longer open to the public, but they have people in them and they're getting food and drinks and everything's being brought to them. It's mostly single men who are not supposed to be in our country.
Yeah, another thing I heard is that there's a lot of these. Well, I heard a guy come. He was in a rest home, and he was kicked out because they needed to have a room for refugees. And I thought, what in the
Mhm.
world?
Mhm.
And some of them are veterans, which is like even more horrific as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, us conspiracy theorists have talked about sleeper cells for decades, right? We've heard about it. We've heard Alex Jones talk about that for forever. But now we're starting to hear it in more the mainstream that we have the U.S. government put out a warning itself that and I forget exactly specifically what the specific warning was for, but it had to do with potential terrorist activities within the United States vis-a-vis sleeper cells, right?
Yeah.
So because the mainstream or the government is actually talking about it, gives it a lot more validity, like we talked about last episode, in the mouth or two or more witnesses, right? There's
Mhm.
plenty of witnesses that way that
Well,
so
there was that big scare that there was the day of jihad for all of the
yeah.
world.
Mhm.
That was and what's interesting, and things happened. I think things happened, but it wasn't as widespread or as noteworthy as we might have thought. And that's not to take away from the fact that things could have happened, or maybe that they're still planning to do some things. They're just lulling us into a false sense of security by
Mhm.
saying, so that we say, well, you guys cried wolf. All these things were supposed to happen, and then nothing did. Well, still stay vigilant. Keep your head on a swivel. Still, don't back off of that, because you never know when things are going to start coming. So,
Yeah,
Well, it's
absolutely.
interesting too, because you think about what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and what we're not hearing and not seeing. That's the part that makes me wonder more. And if we're not seeing a lot of things intentionally, right? They're hiding it. The news right now is so strong about Israel and so strong about Palestine that there's a lot of other news stories that aren't being covered. Things like the 400 guns and the 400 sets of body armor like disappearing. And Utah Mike's like, "Hey, that's an inside job." And I'm like, yeah, if it's going to get pulled out of two. One of them was the Manhattan one, I believe, was like an ATF facility. Like, that doesn't
wow.
happen. Highly secured buildings don't just disappear. So
Mhm.
the question is, when things like that happen, your radar should go off. When people are missing at the border, your radar should go off. When you see and hear things about shortages, or like we saw over the last few years, food production plants mysteriously burning up and disappearing, right? Lighting on fire. That's warfare. If I can control your food, if I
Mhm.
can control your money, if I can control your media, if I can control your water, like that right there, those are the simple steps of warfare that you now are controlling a populace.
Yep. Another thing that came out just recently, in fact, was that shooter, the active shooter that just happened. Their manifesto was released by,
Mhm.
I think Crowder.
Crowder. Yeah.
Crowder released the manifesto. Nobody's talking about what was in that manifesto. And what's crazy is that it goes against all the woke agenda stuff and the stuff they're trying to say
Mhm.
and it's like the anti-gun people and the people that are trying to destroy our Second Amendment rights. Everything in that manifesto actually proves the point of why we need to have
Mhm.
guns. And I was watching the Babylon Bee, JP, the comedian JP and Babylon Bee kind of did a little thing together, and they showed a video of it's called I think it's called something along the lines of Californians Move to Texas. And so it was funny because their Texas neighbor, these Californians moved to Texas, and this Texas neighbor comes over and he says, he's got a gun on his side because he's, constitutional carrying, and the Californians freak out like, oh, this guy's got a gun. This guy's got a gun. We got, I'm recording you. You better not use your gun on me. He's like, look, she's like, in California, there was so much crime and there was all these problems, and we had to be worried. We were nervous about getting robbed every time we went to our car. And the guy from Texas was like, yeah, there's none of that here. And they're like, why? He says, because everybody's got a gun. And so the reality is that these, again, I'm sure I didn't read the whole thing, but I'm sure there's something regarding this in this manifesto, because it was the last guy that had a manifesto, that they chose a place that they knew would be unarmed to do their dirty work. And I think that's going to be one of the big deterring factors, is we need to get more citizens armed. So in terms of an invasion happening, what can we do about it? One, learn how to defend yourself, not just with weapons, but also with your fists, with your, learn some combat, learn how to defend yourself, because we never know when we're going to get in an altercation of some kind. There's so many people robbing different homes now and coming up to the door and just breaking in when you're there. So there's just a lot of weird stuff going on, and we need to be ready and prepared.
Well,
go ahead.
Our government says that the number one concern, their number one security concern throughout the country is homeland terrorism. And I know I didn't say that properly, but essentially local militants, right? White males, right? And they completely are ignoring the border. Again, we talked a little bit about in our last segment about truth and lies. And man, there couldn't be anything that's more glaringly lie than that statement, right? It's the exact opposite. Like you said, Paris, a polite society, an armed society is a polite society. And essentially what you said about that Texas community right there is, if everyone's armed, everyone's going to be polite, because they know they can get themselves shot if they're not.
Anybody could be carrying, and you don't want to mess around with it,
That's right.
Yeah.
What's the thing? FAFO?
It's funny because
F around, find out.
Yeah, that's true.
Fool around and find out. We talked a couple episodes about building your dream team, and Paris, you weren't here for that, but one of the things that I top on my list is swivel heads. Right? We talked about the bobbleheads and swivel heads. Like I know what's going on around me. Right? A swivel head knows what's going on around them. They're always aware. And that's the thing, is like, every one of these people that's come to this country, invading our country with the intent to do harm, they're looking for the easiest targets. Same thing with shooters, active shooter scenarios. They're always looking for the easiest soft targets, right? Where they can make the biggest impact with the least amount of effort. Well, what is our media and what is everything else doing, right? One of the biggest invasions that's been going on is the invasion of the consumer mindset.
Good point.
People won't do what they should do because they're too focused on what they want to buy. For example, does it make more sense to live deep in the city or out in the suburbs or further out in the rural areas? And in the rural areas, be self-sufficient, maybe be off-grid, maybe grow all your own food, right? Maybe no longer participate in the United States economy, right? That's one end of the spectrum. Or, I can't do that because I need my Walmart delivery on every Tuesday and Friday so I can get my groceries on demand. Or I can't get my Uber ride where I want to go. Or I need to get a new credit card so I can afford to get that Uber ride and get my groceries, right? We're prioritizing the wrong things because we've been for years misled by everything in the United States to focus us on buy, consume. We're consuming movies, we're consuming radio, we're consuming all the things that really don't build us or develop us in any way, shape, or form, and in fact distract us. so that we can't go do, or maybe not can't, but so that we choose instead to consume rather than go learn something or do something or grow or develop. And it's funny because if you're on social media at all, you see a lot of times there are these huge debates over who the GOAT is, right? GOAT is an acronym for greatest of all time when it comes to basketball. And there's arguments over Michael Jordan and LeBron James and da-da-da. And now I'm seeing things going back to Wilt Chamberlain again. And what's interesting is that is the same today as the Roman Colosseum was during Rome's rule. It was the great distraction.
The circus.
Get them coming into the circus, get them buying popcorn and peanuts and Cracker Jacks and focusing on the clowns and in the Colosseum and not the clowns in charge. Because if we saw the clowns in charge and what's going on, we would riot and it would get out of hand and we'd do something. But we've been placated for generations into believing and thinking we can't do anything, we shouldn't do anything. Oh, we'll go get that new PlayStation instead. And that's, I think, the greatest invasion that we're not paying attention to. And who's paying for it? China is paying a lot of money for it. They're buying a lot of farmland. They're selling us all the consumer goods that we're using. They're producing. Where are all the chemical cleaners coming from? Where is everything coming from? It's not from the U.S.
Well,
we're buying everybody else's garbage.
I think you bring up a good point, Scott. I was listening to, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I was listening to a little bit of Tucker Carlson's, where he had, I think it was the Argentinian president, or at least the presidential candidate, talking about America. And he said that, America is so strong from the outside. Their military force has always been recognized as the strongest military in the world. And he says, if anything is going to take out America, it's going to be America. Like the way to destroy America is from within. And we know that actually scripturally. Even the only way, really, if you think about it, Jesus, the way he was, now I don't know if it was the only way, but the way he was ended up getting crucified on the cross was because an inside man betrayed him. And so that goes back to our last episode too, about discerning truth and from error. But the invasion that's happening, we need to really be working about or thinking about is what's the inside job that I know that Utah Mike kind of mentioned that earlier about an inside job. That's how I believe America will fall, or the ultimate fall of America is going to come from the circus. It's going to come from give them bread in the circus. It's going to keep them on the on the hamster wheel with consumerism, keep them, distracted so they don't really know what's going on at the border, keep them distracted. And the border is not just the physical border, but we're talking about like people on boats too, like the ships that are coming in. And we're seeing all kind, and not just that, but all the changing over the years, we see the next generation or the rising generation of our children are so woke. It's ridiculous. And there's more people statistically that are LGBTQ in this particular generation coming up than before. Like, what's happening biologically that would be the case? Really,
right.
nothing.
Nothing.
It's
exactly.
more of an ideology, and that's part of the invasion.
That's what I wanted to point out there, is that we're being deceived into thinking and that what you mentioned there, a lot of those agendas, whether it's a biological gender and so forth, is that it's a much larger percentage of the population than it actually is. It's like 1 to 5% that these extreme views, and we'll call that, to be polite, extreme views and beliefs are actually a much higher percentage than they actually are. And so the minority is just being much louder than we are, because we think the best of people, and we don't want to hurt feelings. We want to try and accommodate people's rights, and we're trying to do the right thing, but we are being deceived into thinking that there is a much larger percentage, and that, to me, that's an invasion as well. Like we're talking about different types of invasion of lies, like we were talking about in our last segment as well. Is that the lies are they're everywhere. Lies and deceit and just those who are looking to benefit are doing and saying whatever they have to to get their way, and they think they're right, or they believe they're right, which they're not.
That's true.
Well, and it's funny too, because have you tried talking to a woke youth lately?
Oh yeah.
They don't
They-
even understand what truth is. Like they don't understand what facts are. Like you can't argue with a drunk person. It's like it's like
That is
it's
the
crazy.
That's a
best.
good
You can't
analogy,
argue with a drunk person, and that's what it is. They're drunk on lies, drunk on propaganda. And if you try to have that conversation, if you push truth, they freak out and they cry and they scream and they yell and
Mhm. They
and
threaten.
they threaten and they tell you that you're being violent against them, and it blows my mind. But what's interesting is if you talk to someone who's even just the littlest awake, they're like, wait, what? And the more you talk about things, they're like, how can I learn more about that? How can I get more involved? Right. And that's the part that I just like, we need to have more conversations to help more people get awake, pay attention, and start doing what they know they should have been doing for years. You know, maybe they're starting to do it now, but help them get moving on the right thing and the right understanding. Because for us to defend the invasion, you have to be on alert, even if it's maybe just, light yellow alert in the meantime, right? Until things go nuts, because things are sloping away from us.
Yeah, and Lacey's got a point here. There's a lot of things that we're taking into our bodies that are on purpose, right? The things that are in our food, the drugs we take, the poisons we take intentionally.
Right.
Exactly. Like you said, the chemtrails, the Tide Pods, which is, that was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard, is that people actually eating those Tide. Unbelievable. Anyway.
What's interesting, because that happened, and now they're like, nutritionally, it's safe to do this, but there's a food version, but borax, which is a laundry booster, right?
Mineral.
People are using that to actually get rid of a lot of the garbage, like the chemtrail stuff and everything else, and all
to detox, right? Using borax for detox.
So you got to be careful.
But I also wanted to mention,
crazy everywhere.
Yeah, she says it's not their fault, and I think to some extent that could be true, right? Because of the fluoride that's been pumped into our systems for decades. I don't drink fluoridated water, but you've got a point there. But also, that's their mentality as well. It's not my fault. I deserve this. I deserve that, right? I don't know what that has to do with invasion, but I wanted to point that out is that I hear that all the time. It's not my fault, so you have to take care of me, right? I mean, I'm handicapped. I'm disabled because of what's been done to me.
There was that Russian KGB guy that had that interview back in the 70s or 80s, whatever it was. That I can't remember the name of him right now, but he talked about how that it's going to be very easy to overcome America because we're going to slowly but surely convert ideological subversion, and we're going to start to get their kids to believe different things. And each generation is going to be slowly but surely start to believe more and more into Marxism and communism, and that's what we see. And so you're right. There's a part of it that's like it's not their fault, but because they've been programmed and conditioned, and there was a purpose. However, who defended them? Like, where was the people that were going to fight against it? Like, why? To me, I'm just like, when I woke up, unfortunately, I woke up after it had already been, a lot of the damage had already been done. And so that's part of why we do this show, is to help wake people up. Like, we need to fight. I believe this is true. And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember. I know Jordan Peterson said it, but if you have a truth to speak and you don't, that's actually helping the lie. So if you have a truth, speak it, be part of the fight, because the invasion is an invasion of lies. It's an invasion of wokeness, and we need to fight against that invasion with awake and rise up and fight against this invasion that's happening, and teach truth, give people the truth, and help people become more self-reliant, come back to some of the things that we've neglected over the years. And this invasion is real, and learn. One of the big things that we need to learn is we need to understand how to be violent, but not be violent. Like know how to defend, know how to fight, know how to, keep our families safe physically, emotionally, spiritually. We need to have not a fight in so many areas, and we're losing all of that because we just want to be nice.
So
And that's
here's
part
a
of the
yeah.
invasion of nice is another invasion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think another thing we wanted to talk about on here is what to do about this, right? Not just to bring it to light if you haven't noticed, which I'm sure most of you have noticed, is to talk about solutions, what to do about here. And next week we're going to talk about returning to our roots. That's one of our topics, and that's one thing I've noticed lately is that we see people giving in. We see people that are just succumbing to all these lies and propaganda and this all these invasions, since we're talking about invasion. But there are a tremendous amount of people, including ourselves, who are returning to our roots, who are moving out of the cities, who are noticing all the lies and doing something about it. So that's really what I wanted to mostly talk about this segment is what to freaking do about it, because we cannot let this happen. I mean, to my family, to me, to those I love, I'm not going to let it happen. I'm going to do everything I can to repel the invaders of every kind.
I think number one, first and foremost, is listen to the prior episode talking about understanding and identifying truth.
Yeah.
Number two, teaching your kids the truth. Teaching your kids how to critically think and how to judge whether something is right or wrong or something is suspect, right? It's such I hear it all the time and it kind of bugs me, but I also kind of love this phrase. Everyone's like, oh, that's so sus. That's sus. And I'm like, suspect. Say the whole word. There's a whole word there, people. But I love it because
Can't be bothered with saying the whole word, Scott.
People at work say this all the time, and it's mostly guys that are like 20 years younger than me. So I'm like, oh man, I was at this house. It was so sus. And I'm like, what? It was sus. I'm like sus. Something weird. Like, is that like an act? And I just tease them. But teach people how to actually look around and see things and identify things and ask them, does that look right or wrong to you? Right. But then that's the visual and awareness and listening thing part of it. But the other part of it is going back to the whole Jordan Peterson thing is like, you need to teach your kids to be monsters, absolute monsters. And we men especially need to be absolute monsters. And I'm not going to ask a single mom out there to be a monster. And here's why. They already have mama bear in them.
Oh yeah.
And a good mom is going to also encourage her husband to be the monster for the family, right? When we go places, my wife loves the fact that I'm a monster. However, when there's a family argument with in-laws and outlaws and everybody else, she hates the fact that I'm a monster because she's like, oh no, don't, no. And I'm like, babe, it's under control. But you could. And I'm like, I could.
You see, I'm smiling because I know exactly what he's talking about. Scott's talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I am an absolute in check monster, and I love that and hate that about me.
Yeah,
Amen, dude.
Yeah, I hear you. I was
we
thinking.
all need to be.
Yeah, I was thinking. There are a lot of pessimistic comments, and optimistic comments we're making. We want to be optimistic overall, right? And that's why we're talking about solutions. So, and I think it's important to remember. First of all, the pessimist is the one who complains about the wind, right? The wind's blowing. Oh, I'm complaining about the wind. The optimist, thinks the wind's going to change. But the realist is the one who adjusts the sails, right? So we need to adjust our sails to attack. Call it attack, because you have to attack the when you're ambushed, you have to attack the ambush. And this invasion is an ambush. For those who aren't looking, right? Those who aren't watching, it's an ambush. And the only way to defend an ambush is to attack that ambush. Like you say, be a monster.
What's interesting when it comes to an attack, there's in sword fighting, there's a word I'm trying to think of right now, but it's basically when someone's attacking you, you're using their attack against them. What is that called? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I think so, but I don't know the phrase. Aikido does that too, where you use their force against them.
You're using their.
Right. Aikido does it really well. Krav Maga does it really well. But basically, take take their effort and use their effort and their energy and their power to take them out, basically. And it's when I did Krav Maga seriously, and I want to get back into it so bad. When I did it seriously, and I was going sometimes 4 times a week, it it fed my beast, like it fed the monster in me. And I actually almost started fighting in the cage, and I was like, this would be.
I'd pay to watch that, Scott.
And I'm like, oh, that's probably a bad idea because that would just feed the beast more. But one of the things that I loved about it is everything was about using the other person's energy and effort to increase all the damage you can possibly inflict to the highest level and then get out of there. But all of that has to happen after you've already tried to deflate the situation and disarm or just get out of the situation. First of all, like the first thing to do in any conflict is to get out of the conflict.
Yeah.
Because once the conflict turns physical, nobody wins.
So yeah, that's maybe where we start off with what do we do, right? Number one, avoidance, right? Avoid
the physical. Like, okay, for example, you see shady stuff going on. For example, an active shooter scenario starting to pop off. It's too late. And if you have the training, the mindset, and the equipment, you should do something. If you see a kid starting to go down that path, you need to start talking to that kid and engaging that kid, because number one, that's where they're going to feel left out and isolated. When they get isolated, that's where there's a problem. None of us do well in isolation. As human beings, none of us do well in isolation.
Yeah, the devil's in those shadows, and the devil's in that isolation. I think I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and they showed a conflict, and there's domestic conflict. Like some dude was literally in a parking lot, and he was getting in his car, and some other dude runs at him with a machete, and he looked around, and there was nowhere for him to go. That was the first thing, was to him. He backed off and figured out if he could get away from it, but once he realized there was no place to go,
right,
the second thing he did was he ran towards the guy and took him out. And that's important to remember, is that if you have a guy with a machete, the last place you want to be is within arm's length, is in his reach. You want to be close as you can to him or as far away as you can. There's like that middle ground is not good. And that was a really neat thing to see. And the podcaster talked about that. And he said, look, if you're going to have a conflict, we're seeing more and more of this throughout the world. Like there's weird people robbing houses, coming at you in the streets, and you're going to need to learn how to defend yourself and really figure that out physically. So there's a real need to learn more about how to do that. And if you're a mealy mouse and a pansy, you're not going to, first of all, you're not going to know what to do.
That's when you get into reinforcing your home. Right? Your home is your great safe place. If you build it right, if you fortify your home, like in this conversation, we need to talk about fortifying our minds, fortifying our spirit, and fortifying our home and family, right? Those are the things we have to fortify and stay. Lacey a minute ago mentioned how she teaches her kids about situational awareness because of the show, right? Close your eyes and ask them the questions about the environment. Like, that's their favorite game. Like, do those things to help fortify and strengthen your family. Like, I do that with my kids, and one of them is a little too young to really understand what the heck's going on, but the other one's starting to get it. And we need, all of us, we need to be more aware, and we need to fortify our homes, fortify ourselves. If you're not taking time every day to fortify your spirit, it's going to be harder to fortify your mind and harder to fortify your home.
You know, it
because
goes back
everything
to that.
starts spiritually first.
I think it goes back to that old saying, is that the only thing that evil needs to have to prevail is that good men do nothing. And I may have hacked it a little bit, but that's where good men, good women need to step up and start to fight. That's one of the biggest problems was why we are being invaded right now in so many different fronts, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, psychologically, is because for so long we just kind of had the good life. Like everything's great, everything's good. We don't need to worry about anything. It's so easy. We can be complacent really quickly. And the devil and his details were kind of percolating in the background underneath. And now he's finally coming up, and we're like, whoa, where'd you come from? And we got caught off guard. And if you really want to be honest. And so now I feel like the fact that they came up and tried to attack, there enough. Thankfully, enough people are starting to wake up, and we need more. Granted, we do need more. And Utah Mike's right, is that if the woke is not checked, it grows exponentially. And we need to check it. That's our job now. Good men need to check that evil and stop it from moving. This is the line. You're not going to pass this line, and we got to stop that. And that's what we need to do. And in order to really do that properly, we need to understand what principles we're fighting for.
Yeah, what I was going to say,
we're going to stand on.
What I was going to say is that woke is like growing weeds. They just grow everywhere, uncontrolled. They just grow. But to grow a garden, to become awake, takes a lot of effort. It takes knowledge. It takes having the right seeds and water, and it's just a lot more effort to be awake. That is, woke is the easy way, right? It's the easy way, and that everybody wants easy, like you're saying, Paris. We're just, and I'm not going to lump myself in there, but the country, there's so many people who are just lazy and just want it easy.
What's interesting, because I actually just had this conversation last week with these kids, and they were talking about how I keep saying kids, 20 to 30-year-olds, and they're talking about how they need more free medical stuff. They want more health rights. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine, but who's going to pay for it? And they're like, well, the medical industry, of course. So I'm like, well, who's going to compensate them for their time and resources? Well, the government. I'm like, okay, and where are they going to get that money? And they're like, they have it. I'm like, but where are they going to get it? Because they don't have an unlimited supply. That's why the nation is in debt. The nation's in debt? I'm like, yeah, the nation's deeply in debt. We are about to forfeit and completely lose everything yet again because of our stupid spending. Who pays for all this stuff? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, you pay for it. You know that taxes that come out of your paycheck? Yeah, that's garbage. I'm like, it pays for these. Oh, so I'm already paying for stuff. Yeah. And they were just like, mind blown.
And paying through inflation as well.
They're like, how? I'm like, there's so much more I could teach you if we had time. But I'm like, go listen to my podcast, because it covers
part of the problem of the invasion. I mean, if nobody teaches real economics, personal finance, so they're not going to teach us anything about, the whole, how the world actually runs. The other thing too is, I mean, it's totally maybe off topic, but this whole idea, well, let's raise minimum wage to 15. You can raise minimum wage to $50. It doesn't matter. But a Big Mac is going to cost $30. If you do, they transfer the money. The consumer pays for it. Like, you can do all this great stuff, but the consumer pays for it at the end. Yeah. They're not going to pull it out of their executive bonuses. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, the CEOs get their golden parachutes, and they get their multi-million dollar, sometimes billion-dollar benefit of being a CEO, right? And of controlling an agenda, and of getting people to waste money on something stupid, right? They get bonused and benefited for that. What we as just the normal people, we're all fighting what's sadly against each other. When those the ones we need to be fighting against are the ones that are pushing these agendas. And the invasion that's already happened and is continuing to happen is what we need to be focused on, and we need to be fighting. And you've got to wake up and start fortifying. If you don't know how to do, and we're going to talk about this next week, we're going to talk about going back to some of the basics, learning from our ancestors, food preservation, like our friend Prepstetter, who just popped in the conversation. Sydney's amazing at food preservation, right? If you don't know how to do basics of self-defense, if you don't know how to mend fences. Fences are fantastic because they can keep bulls out, and they can also keep bulls in. They can keep your monster in check, but they can also keep the other monsters out of your yard, out of your area of safety, right? Learning how to fix things, maintain things, how to garden, like those things that everybody knew how to do 60 plus years ago, almost nobody knows how to do now.
Yeah.
And that's what's eroding at our protection and our willingness to get the job done today.
Here's something. Oh, you're going to say something, Paris?
I was just going to say the first step is to wake up yourself. And then once you know and are aware of what's going on in the world and the invasion that's happening on all fronts, take time to then teach your family. Strong families create strong communities. Strong communities create strong cities, strong states, strong countries. And then, of course, I mean, Utah Mike brought it up a couple minutes ago. The woke did well in yesterday's election. In certain areas, they did. And so I'm just going to bring that up because it's up to us, the people who are running this country. If right now we're still concerned about what's really happening and how they really got there, I can't say certain things, otherwise YouTube will be upset with us. But if you know what I mean, you know what I mean about how did they get in power. But the original process was that we were to vote and we were to be able to choose them and we were to be able to put them and do our due diligence and get good people ahead of running things. If you're not voting, and some people have really given up, and they've really given up, and that's fine. If you've given up in the past, learn, do your homework, do your study, learn, get yourself in order, get your family in order. And then once you've got yourself in order and your family in order, start working on your community and getting good people into positions that are going to really start to make a difference. We can't win federally if our states are all jacked up, if our counties are all jacked up. We got to fix our families, fix our counties, fix our states, and then we have a chance against anything else. So that's a big thing too, is just be more active politically, understand the Constitution, understand and realize what's really true in regards to how this country should be run. And you'll see the disparity, how it should be run versus how it's actually being run. And you'll be like, wait a minute, we need to make some changes. And so that was what I was going to say, Shane.
Okay. No, I was going to take a little bit different topic, Scott, if you had another.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say,
ahead.
Something that's been brought to my attention recently, and it kind of goes along these same lines of invasion, how to defend from an invasion, because things are getting real. I think it's going to hit the fan very soon. I think we're going to see some things happening. And a couple of quick comments. First of all, Lieutenant Jeff Cooper, one of the greats in getting guns and getting shooting into the common person's lifestyle. He said, an unarmed man can only flee from evil, and evil is not overcome by fleeing from it. So one thing I've been thinking and been brought to my attention recently is, and I think most of you know, I carry every day. I think a lot of you probably do too, and is actually stepping that game up. And how do you step that up? You take a rifle with you wherever you go. I mean, that's difficult. It's not easy for me to do that because I go see customers, I go see clients, I go see to job sites and so forth. But taking the next step in whatever it is, if you're carrying a small pocket pistol, step it up to a compact or full size. If you're carrying a compact or full size, step it up and carry a rifle. At least put it in your truck. Make that part of your daily routine to where that close friend of yours, your favorite rifle, is going with you on your shoulder, along with a bag, your kit for that rifle, and start to change that mindset to where you're stepping it up. And maybe whatever it is, whatever stepping it up means to you, on whatever it may be. If it is firearms or if it's canning or whatever, it's time to step it up because we are being invaded.
Well, and it's the funny thing is this all goes back to an analogy in my brain that, because I'm a very visual person, this is how I'm seeing it. A lot of people, the United States, we are in a mud pit. And people are waking up and they're realizing, I need to fix this. And they're just trying to climb out. In reality, prepping is a set of ladders. If you're trying to help somebody else out of a mud pit and it's so muddy that you can't get your footing and you're slipping and you're sliding, how are you going to help somebody else out if you don't have a good, steady foundation? If you want to help people fight the invasion that's currently going on, you have to be taking steps to be better prepared and more personally responsible, right? I work behind TSA lines where I'm not allowed to take personal protection devices. And if I did, I would get arrested.
Dang.
However, wherever I can, I'm armed.
Yeah, I went to California this last week. I know. I had to go behind enemy lines.
California staying?
Yeah, California, exactly. For you Californians, I was there. I had to fly on a plane, so I didn't get to carry. I felt naked every day that I was there without my carry, without my
Mhm.
knife, my gun, my everything. So it's like, I really think that that's important for us to constantly be in a place. If you have those tools that you can use, learn how to use them effectively, get training, know what you're doing with that. And that's just not the only way we can train. And those are not the only tools, but they're important tools. We need to have, the tools to be able to, like our last episode, we talked about discerning truth. We need to have tools that we can talk to our kids and our families we need to know and understand our rights and our privileges, that what they really are and what they're not. And we got to stand up and fight. And if you feel like you have a voice, have something to say, join with somebody else or just start talking. I mean, you'll be surprised how many people, if you start telling truth, you'll be surprised how many people will stand up and say, hey, you know what? They're strong. I can be strong. Let's be strong together. And that's how we win. The left, part of me, the ideology that's happening with the woke ideology, and really ends up being like the left ideology.
Yeah.
They're relentless. They don't stop talking. They don't stop moving. They're relentless. They don't seem to sleep. They don't seem to stop. And the conservatives, or that more the truth, that conservative, that moral compass, we need to match that. We need to stand up and match that at some level as much as we can. And it doesn't take much. The old Shane, you talked about statistics at some point in our podcasts.
Mhm.
But the statistic is that 3% of America was who stood up to the tyranny. And when our country was founded, it was the 3%ers. The 3% is all that really takes to stand up and fight against tyranny. And if you're part of that, by the way, there's a great video, and I don't remember what it is. Maybe I'll find it and put a link in the description once we get this out. But there's a great video about salt and being the salt of the earth, and what Christ really meant as he talked about being salt of the earth. And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot of salt, but it does take some. And we need the salt of the earth, the good, moral, valued people need to band together and stay together. And we need to fight against the darkness and that's coming. And we need to be that light and fight against that dark invasion that's happening. I think that's really key to this whole thing, is to realize that we can stand up. We're not alone. There's just so many people out there, and they want us to feel like we're alone. The darkness wants us to feel like we're alone, but we're not. There's a lot of people out there that think with a good moral compass, and they want to have those values, and they want to establish good Christian ethic again. And I think that we need to stand up and keep going.
Here's the quote. It's Samuel Adams. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men.
Amen.
Love that quote.
So do I. We have to set our brush fires, right? We are all in a place of danger, but we don't need to be panicking about it. We don't need to be freaking out. We need to be fortifying and strengthening ourselves. Satan's going to be attacking all the time on two primary offenses: physical and spiritual. If he can get you on one, the other one's not far behind. So you've got to be building your fortifications there. You've got to be taking initiative individually and personally. Take personal responsibility, because in the world now, doesn't matter where you live. Gray Man actually just pointed this out. It doesn't matter where you live, but you are behind enemy lines. We all are. And we need to stand up and work together to stay free and to stay safe. No one else has the responsibility for your safety except for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
No one else has the responsibility for feeding your family except for yourself. No one else can do those things if you're not willing to do it yourself. There's just not the resources going around just magically appearing out of thin air. Oh, here's a year of food storage. Oh, here's all the soaps you need. Oh, here's all the medications you need. It doesn't just apparate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to work for it. You have to go get it. You have to be determined. You've got to turn off the distractions, and you have to take action.
Yeah, one thing I tell my final comment, thing I tell my kids all the time is to decide. They just have to decide. Whatever it is, decide, make a decision and move forward with that decision. Just and I guess I go a little bit too extremes that way. What that means, you can apply that to anything and every aspect of your life. Just decide.
That's so
Yeah.
valuable. Like if they don't make a decision one way or the other, they're just going to keep getting tossed around.
Mm-hmm.
It's as soon as we make a decision, we make a resolute decision, that we have a firm foundation and we have somewhere we can start from.
Yeah, it
That
reminds
is
me of a
so
saying:
wise.
if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if you like where you are in life, keep doing that. If you don't like where you are in life, it's time to change. And
Yep.
I'm studying Stoicism right now and really understanding that. And one of the things that I just continually hear, and it's a Christian principle too, which I love, is the ability to choose and this responsibility that the choices that you've made have given you the results that you have. And so if you don't like what you've been having, if you don't like what's happening in your life, make different choices. It can be that simple. It's not always that easy, but it is that simple. And I hope that as you've been listening today, you've really gotten inspired to recognize that the invasion is happening, and not just to be aware of an invasion, but to be inspired to step up and say, you know what, I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm going to be part of the answer. I'm going to be part of those that are going to really take this and move forward. So thank you everybody for being on the show with us tonight in our live. We're really excited to have a lot of folks. We had a great group. We had a lot of interaction, several people spending one. I love what Lacey said. I'm surprised I'm so chatty tonight. That was awesome. And so the more that we can come together and communicate with each other and buoy each other up and strengthen one another and edify one another, I think the better off we'll be. So thank you so much for being with us. You've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio for the ready-minded with your hosts, Scott, Shane, and Paris. Have a wonderful evening. Stay ready-minded. Keep your head on swivel and stay aware of what's going on out there. Talk to you soon. See you on the next one.
See you next week.
Yeah.